Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Henrik Bick, here with the communications team at MusicBiz. Happy to welcome you all to today's webinar session hosted by Feed Media Group. Hope you all are doing well, staying happy, healthy, and safe. Before we get started today, just want to run through a couple of housekeeping notes. For today's session, if you're going to be asking any questions for the presenters, we'll be answering them at the end of the session. Be sure to use the dedicated Q&A box for all questions, and you can use the chat function here on Zoom to connect with one another during the presentation. Outside of webinars for a second, I want to talk to you about a couple of the events that MusicBiz has coming up. Next week, April 13th to the 15th is our Next Gen Now Young Professionals Conference. Up until this week, we have finally made our final announcements for the program. This week, we announced that S10 Entertainment founder and CEO Brandon Silverstein will deliver our day 2 opening keynote interview in a session hosted by Billboard senior editor Lindsay Havens. Even though it's next week, it's not too late to register. Be sure to visit our website, musicbiz.org, to do so. We also just announced our proper data planning event for metadata, April 27th to 28th, hosted on our Socio platform. It's a new 2-day event focused specifically on helping artists, creatives, and their teams manage their metadata. Super important in the modern music business to not only getting paid properly and on time, but also to ensuring that your music is being put on the hottest playlist ASAP. We just announced that our opening keynote for the session will be accomplished songwriter and artist activist Dan Navarro. And our full schedule is online now. You can find that and the registration link also via musicbiz.org. Back to webinars for a second. Our next upcoming webinar will take place Thursday, April 29th from 1 to 2:30 p.m. Eastern. It's a little bit different from our 2 to 3 slot that we're in today. Hosted by PEX, and it'll be a follow-up to their December event, Article 17, Where Are We? Talking about some crucial updates for the upcoming deadline for the Article 17 copyright change in the UK. So be sure to register for that now. You can find information on that on our website as well. And then on May 6th, going back to that 2 to 3 time slot, we'll be talking with Music Reports about how their free tools can help you maximize your royalty income from as many global sources as possible. Outside of events, just want to extend a reminder to all MusicBiz members. Our mental health fund is here to help in case of our member who has lost their job or employment has changed, lost income, to help fund essential mental health services such as screenings or therapy sessions. You can find more information and the application for that on the Empower section of our website. And once again, want to extend our thanks to the SCARS Foundation and Music Health Alliance for helping make this member benefit possible. Finally, for information on this, for future events, for all things MusicBiz and our members, be sure to visit our website. Again, that's musicbiz.org. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram at MusicBizAssoc. And all that information I'll drop in the chat for you after I get off camera, so that way you can access it easily. But enough from me. You're here to see Feed Media. So I'm thrilled to welcome Lauren Pufpaf, the co-founder and COO of Feed Media Group, to talk to you today. Take it away, Lauren.
Hey, Henrik, can you enable video for me, please? There we go. Perfect. Thanks so much. So excited to be here today talking about a topic that is near and dear to my heart, which is enabling businesses to create really incredible music-centric experiences and to do it quickly and legally. I'm here with a great group of gals. I'll first intro myself. So I'm Lauren Pufpaf, COO of Feed Media Group. My background is primarily in growth and operations for SaaS companies, which means I've spent the last 20 years or so trying to figure out how to help companies grow and scale. And a lot of the analysis that goes into that process is figuring out how do you create the absolute best customer experience with the least amount of resources, which is a lot of what we'll be talking about today. So sort of in that early stage of growth, when should you start thinking about music? How should you think about it? And what are some resources to help you? So I will pass it over to Bryn and Vickie to introduce themselves.
Excellent.
Go ahead, Vickie.
All right. Yeah, I'm really happy to be here. This is also a topic near and dear to my heart. I'm Vickie Nauman, and I run my own consulting and advisory firm called CrossBorderWorks. And prior to that, I worked at 7 Digital. I started up their US business, and have worked with so many startups. I can't even count how many startups in probably the last 20 years, 10 years. And you see this pattern where somebody has a really great idea, and then there's a lot of reasons why something might not succeed, but around music rights, it's a huge stumbling block. And so I'm really happy to be here to have this discussion. Hopefully we'll be able to help some of the startups that are thinking about adding music. And that's kind of my bread and butter. What I do is help people understand what they want to build and what rights are needed, and then help them find the right providers that are going to enable them to get launched on time with legal music.
Right. And Vickie is on our team as well, helping us with some of the intricacies around international licensing, which she'll talk about more later. But so I started out in the music industry at a company that you may or may not have heard of, called Valley Media. And at the time, they were the largest one-stop distributor of audio and video in the country. And I ran developing artist programs with Universal at that time. Then I went to work for an indie label in San Francisco as the general manager before starting Iris Distribution, which was one of the first digital music distribution companies. We launched right on the heels of the iTunes Music Store launch, and ran that for many years. Started a branded entertainment agency arm out of Iris, and then we sold to the Orchard as a part of a roll up into Sony Music. And since then, I've been an advisor to a number of music and music tech companies, including a music rights management company called Louder that was sold to Spotify, a touring tech company called Road Nation, DistroKid. And then I most recently started at Feed Media about 6 months ago as a head of licensing to help kind of optimize licensing across the company, but then with a focus on launching our new platform, which we'll be talking about in more detail later, called Adaptr.
Perfect. Thanks. I'm going to go ahead and cue up some slides for us. Great. So that's us. We're going to be talking a little bit about sort of history, forward looking, and just where things are at now. And I'll just give a quick overview of Feed Media, who we are and what we do. So our core product really is, it's a proprietary streaming platform. We deliver pre-cleared music, both sides, all rights fully covered. We've got a team of curators who, because we're B2B, they're thinking about both the end user and what music is best for them, but also the brand and how we can create some really great experiences that incorporate both those things. We've got user analytics, payments to rights holders, obviously. And a big piece of the value, especially for early stage companies, is that we fully indemnify our customers as well. So if there are any questions or issues or concerns, rights holders come to us versus them. So underneath that big Feed Media Group umbrella, there are really two products. The first is Feed FM, which is powering music for some of the biggest brands across a number of different categories. American Eagle Outfitters in retail. We work with Mayo Clinic in health, Mirror, Tonal Fitness, lots and lots of digital fitness companies. It's been a big year for that, as everyone knows. And then separately is the Adaptr platform, which we recently launched to rights holders and will be launching to startups and developers formally soon. And so Adaptr really is targeted at early stage companies who are trying to create really incredible music-centric experiences, and most importantly, which Vickie can talk about, get to market quickly. So that's kind of our spiel. We'll just jump right in. Bryn, do you want to talk about a little bit about some of the problems that we're trying to solve?
Yeah, sure. So for quite a while now, there has been a real chasm between technology companies, but in particular startups and the music industry. On one side, we have the startups looking to license music for different use cases. A lot of times, it's an afterthought. So they might have built a whole app. They're ready to go. They're approved by the App Store, and then they think there's some they're gonna pick up the phone and make one call and license music, and then they find that it's not the case. There's a lengthy possible couple year process to get the rights that they need. Um, if they have resources, they might hire a consultant, but there's a lot of not just time but resources required historically. And then on the rights holder side, there's been kind of a shaky relationship with technology, some distrust, even when they've tried to make things happen. They see a lot of infringement. They don't have the resources to do all the direct deals, and or even police what's going on.
Mhm.
So not only is there that the problem amongst those two parties, but then ultimately the music fan suffers because they're not able to have access to the music in
And I
creative
think
ways.
what complicates this even further is that music industry is a relationship driven industry. And so there's no, I can't imagine that anyone who's done any kind of licensing has will be surprised when you hear someone who says, "Oh, I've been going round and round and round for 6 months trying to get somebody to answer me and pay attention and explain to me, how all of this works." And people don't have the bandwidth for it. And so you can build an app and try to shop it to people at Universal or Warner or Sony or Beggars or whomever. But if you don't have a trusted relationship, then you're kind of swimming upstream right there, because people, the from the rights holders perspective, the music is theirs to protect, and so they want to entrust it to companies that they feel are going to do the right thing. And so you to go in cold, you're oftentimes just going to get lost. You're just going to get lost in the noise.
Mhm. Even with all that context, I'm surprised how often I still hear folks come to us and say, I'm just not going to worry about it until I get bigger. The fact that that's still a potential strategy is surprising to me, and we always counsel against that, obviously. Do you hear that a lot as well, Vickie? People say, "Oh, I'll worry about it."
All the time. And people say things like, well, we're just going to ask for forgiveness. And I always remind them that there's a handful of companies that have really scaled, YouTube being one of them, that asked for forgiveness, got sued. And then I explain what happens when you ask for forgiveness and that you want to get rights, is that the asking for forgiveness, there is no forgiveness for the past infringement. You are paying for everything in the past, and then you're paying for everything going forward. So the bill and the licensing that you have to undergo to untangle yourself from asking for forgiveness requires an exponentially bigger check than if you started with doing the right thing. And then to circle back to what I just said, which is it's a relationship driven business, the litigation path to licensing is not a great way to start a trusted relationship in an industry that has layers and layers of nuance around this.
Mhm.
So I feel like I feel like, for all of the companies that we know of that have had success, there's a short list of them getting sued and then coming out the other end. There is a graveyard of companies that didn't ever make it out. And that's just a tragedy and kind of a cost of doing business if you have that kind of an attitude. It won't end well.
Yeah, why would you ever want to negotiate from that place, right? It just
Right. It's like you're in a hole, you're in this huge pit, and the people you're negotiating with, they're standing outside of that pit, and you're saying, but we have a really great user experience, and we really think your artists will benefit from this. You're not in a position of strength when you have to go at it from that view.
Yeah,
Right.
I think it comes from a position of desperation sometimes when it's
Mm.
like we've run out of money now and we need music. What are we gonna do?
Yes.
Mm.
Yeah.
And then you're still, you're coming from that weaker position, like you said.
Let's avoid the pit. That's a good.
Avoid the pit.
Exactly.
Well, and so this isn't a new challenge, right? This is something that we in the industry have been talking about for a long time. And so we'll talk a little bit more about Adaptr, but one of our launch partners is Warner Music, and Wanda Alexander, the chief digital officer, she enunciated it very clearly. Look, we're trying to figure this out too, and we've all been talking about it for a long time. And Bryn, I'm sure you have many stories over the years that speak to that as well.
Yeah, I mean they've done well. Yeah, I'm sure Vickie knows too, but they've done experimental sandbox licenses in the past to try to kind of move things forward, but a lot of times those are too restrictive, so it hasn't ended up with the result that they wanted. There have been a number of kind of attempts because they see it's not like the major labels don't recognize that this is something they're missing out on, and it's just, for one thing, they're really big companies, so a lot of it is just negotiating their own organizations to be able to get on the same page about things. But they definitely see, especially now that kind of this is something that its time has kind of come. So in the past, I feel like things have kind of been building up to where we are today, and they recognize that they really missed out on not just a revenue source, but also market data. They don't have a way to really track. They haven't had a way to really track what's bubbling up, new use cases, allow for innovative things that maybe don't fall specifically under these very um, detailed use cases, fall within these. So, yeah. So, I mean, from the rights holder perspective, it definitely is something they've been working on.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that part of why we're in the era that we are, where I think there's an openness to what Adaptr and Feed are doing, acting to kind of mitigate all of the problems of licensing, especially for early stage companies, is that for years, not to be, not to give the history lesson here, but when music was disrupted by the first Napster, it took literally 15 years for us to really scale on-demand streaming globally. And until that point, there was a reluctance from a lot of labels to have lots and lots of small experiences out there. They wanted a handful of big companies that were going to pay them money and that were going to scale globally. And we have that now. And that has given the industry a certain level of stability and a certain level of confidence about their own risk taking and their future. And so I think there's been a maturity to the music tech space that has now lent itself better to smaller, more niche experiences that honestly, it's a lot of these are not worth the labels or the publisher's time, because they're really, really early stage, still figuring out product market fit. But they realize now that that's where all of the innovation is happening, is the small things that are being built all over the ecosystem, where music is enhancing. Music's like the salt and pepper on all of these meals. And they've recognized that it's additive. It is no longer, any of these things are no longer a threat to whether Spotify or Apple Music or Amazon or Google are going to continue to have really robust broad-based services. So I think we're entering a new era where everyone sees that the value of early stage companies and experimentation, and there just hasn't been much of an appetite for it before the money started flowing and before we got to stability and growth in the broad-based services.
It's just part of the maturation process.
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely.
Well, and then, so obviously on the flip side, the companies that we talk to every day are really feeling it as well. I know, Bryn, you just had a call this morning with another startup. What are you hearing that are the struggles that they're dealing with right now?
Yeah, I mean, to reiterate a little bit, it's that there isn't really an understanding in the startup space how long the time frame is that it takes to negotiate deals, and that's in an optimal situation where you have the resource, you have the wherewithal that you know who to call, you've worked your way in through some relationship to have the right conversation, but then just to go through the process of doing those deals. The company I talked to today has been working on stuff since 2017, and then has iterated their app, which has then triggered different types of licenses that they've needed, which they didn't realize that, they had some deals in place, but then didn't realize that it changed their technology was then going to require this other series of licenses. And then, they also have experienced the kind of dynamics between master rights holders, between labels and publishers, and that even if the publisher and the label has the same name, they might not, they could be at odds with each other about what type of rights they want. So that's, a lot of it is, again, that just they've usually music is complicated. Let's just push it down the line. We'll wait till the very end. And then here, a lot of cases, they even have approval in the App Store and they're ready to go. But now it's going to be another year before they can get music. So that's, that's really the common threads I hear.
Yeah, and I think there's I think that there's also, a lot of what I do in my business, I worked in product groups at Sonos and at Real Networks and built out products at KEXP. And so I come from kind of a product sensibility, even though I do licensing. And I think there's a point early in the process, if you're considering doing music, there's a point really early in your iteration, in your vision of what you want to do, to engage with someone and understand rights and how rights impact functionality, and then what those rights cost. Because people sometimes, I've had early stage companies spend a year building out this UI, and then they come to me and they say, look at what we've built. And I look at it, maybe it's wireframes, maybe it's maybe it's on test flight. And I say to them, okay, how, are you funded? And they say, no, we're bootstrapped. And say, okay, let me just help cut to the chase here. The rights that you just built for this are going to be at least $30 million. And so do you have $30 million, or are you going to raise $30 million? Because if you don't have it, I'm not going to take your money and take you around to the labels and publishers for a year and try to get deals for you, because that's exactly where it's all going to end up. I've done it so many times. I've modeled it out. I understand, exactly what, what goes on. And then, then there's oftentimes, I always feel bad because I'm like, I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad news, but then the good news is, if you are agile enough and if you are open to it, there are things that you might be able to do to alter your functionality in shades of gray and be able to get a set of rights that's perhaps, instead of being interactive rights, maybe they're non-interactive rights. And then, then maybe a company like Feed would be able to help with this and be able to provide the right price and the right level of service. Or if that's not right and you really need sync, then it might be that, you know, I've cultivated series of probably about 10 different companies that I think are spectacular, that have really well curated catalogs of music for synchronization licensing. So then it's like, okay, then maybe we do that. But you know, you have to understand that functionality and rights and price and time to market are all wrapped around your product when you're doing something with music. And if you, even one of those things is out of line, then you are, you know, then you have to adjust your product. And so earlier is better, and figuring it, you know, and I also say, you know, lots of people are kind of, they've read lots of stories in the media and they're like, we don't want to, you know, we don't want to license music. We know it's going to be awful and we can't afford it. And I always try to talk people off the ledge and say, you know, there are many, many ways that you can start on the path of building up a catalog and building up your user experience as you're working on product market fit.
There's one other variable. So rights, functionality, geography, that's another big one. And I know that's a lot of what you deal with, and as do we. So, you know, there's no global copyright law, right?
No, exactly. And I think, you know, that's what I'm working on with Feed and Adaptr, is I'm working on getting international clearances. So if there are Feed and Adaptr customers that are here, just, you know, be patient and know that that's coming soon. But a lot of people think, well, I'm going to do US and then I want the rights for Europe. Like, Europe is a market, and it is not that way. In every single country, there are different copyright laws. There are different definitions of functionality, and there's also different pricing structures, what things are governed, what things are privately negotiated, and then norms around how does this actually get done. And those norms are oftentimes kind of unspoken. And you need to understand that every market, in addition to all of the complexities around licensing, that there are different dynamics of user behavior and expectations around catalog. When you, especially places like, you know, Australia has an incredibly strong local music scene. You know, don't even think of launching in Australia unless you have really great music from Australian labels. And you know, what we're doing is we're basically taking the US model of how functionality and how everything works here, and then we normalize it, and we normalize it for everyone in the rest of the world. And then we go to the different entities and we present that, and we try to get the deals as close and as harmonized as possible, so that you can have, as you know, every technology company, you know, you don't want to build something different for Germany than you do for the US. And so we want to get the functionality to be the same. We want to get as much of the rights to be similar so that you can model out your financials, and that you know with confidence that you can launch in markets across the pond and have the right music and have the right experience.
Vickie, we need to write a white paper.
We probably should.
We try to do a lot of education, and we try to break things down in the simplest way possible. And it's hard, it's really hard. So I think there are, you know, as you were talking about product managers, I was just contemplating the fact that so many heads of product for early stage music centric companies have no clue about copyright law, or any, haven't even really considered it as part of their knowledge base in order to grow and build this company. And just I feel like there's an opportunity to create a primer that would be helpful.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think that, you know, I remember when I first joined Sonos, it's not just early stage companies. You know, I joined Sonos and it was still early days for them. But I remember within the first couple of months, some of the engineers, I was the first person there really to deal with music on the rights and the business side. And some of the engineers came and they said, hey, we want to show you what we've built. And they, they showed me this, it was all the product people. They showed it to me and I was like, well, that is really great, but you can't do that, and not only can you not do it, you can't even let anybody know that you built it, because that's going to cause all sorts of suspicions about the company. And I think even really seasoned product managers, music is like this, X factor. It's like the Richter scale of everything, because you have things that you don't consider: metadata, problems with metadata. How are you presenting this? Are you going to let people browse? Are you going to give them a programmed stream? Are you going to give them on-demand access? Are you going to allow people to cache that music? Are you going to display lyrics? Are you going to have a playlist function? How are you going to track it? Are you going to capture the tracking? Are you going to be able to report it out? What's your finance department look like? All of those things make a difference. And those are not things that product managers normally take into consideration when they're doing a build, but you really have to with music.
And music, and it's not like the rights are static either. I mean, with a lot of the new, that's the problem with like a white paper, is that things change. And then a lot of times the copyright law is so far behind the actual use cases that you're then trying to kind of shove this new use case into this law that wasn't really necessarily contemplating that. And then, so you even have the industry and not even always agreeing with each other on what this particular thing falls under.
No,
So
that is such a good point, Bryn. And I wanted to follow up on something you said a few minutes ago too, which was how Warner Music has embraced this, which is fantastic. And but some of the experiments that labels have done in the past of doing an experimental license for 1 year, I almost feel like that's a disservice to startups, because from an engineering standpoint, what you have to do to build a product and then make it work on iOS and Android and web-based and mobile web, and and build everything into it. Having an experimental license that expires at the end of 1 year, and you have no visibility into what your costs are going to be after that year, is a failed solution. It doesn't really help, because you have to build everything in for very, very long term. And I think that this has also been something where labels have been really reluctant to cede control to early stage companies. And I feel like there is just no other solution than to have companies like Feed and Adaptr that are providing music for a defined use case. Feed and Adaptr are not trying to do everything. They're not trying to do all the sync licensing. They're not trying to do an on-demand service that competes with Spotify and Apple Music. It's a specific use case. And that is why we're also seeing all the success that you're having, because you're not trying to take over the world. You're just trying to serve a particular vertical.
Not yet. Well, so that's a good segue. So talking a little bit more about solutions. We know there's a problem. And why now is the time is right. So Vickie, you mentioned just the maturation, the evolution in the market, and some stabilization as well. There's also the fact that the global app market has just exploded. So, we're seeing almost 18% compounded annual growth rates, 400 billion market by 2026. And there are lots of reasons that we're all aware of, things that were already in motion being accelerated by the pandemic. And, in addition to that, you've got revenue streams that have slowed down in the last year as well. Obviously, touring is problematic at the moment. And there's we're hearing and seeing definitely a mind shift and an open-mindedness to solutions when, to your point, Vickie, they are geared to very specific use cases that everyone understands and that can be policed, if you will, or monitored, I guess is a better way to say it.
Yeah, exactly.
So Bryn, you want to give a quick overview on Adaptr and what we're doing here?
Yeah. So because of all the factors that we talked about, we created Adaptr to give developers a place where they can not just have instant access to a license, but also a way, all the underlying technology that powers the streaming, handles all the compliance and tracking, and then also all of that complicated detailed reporting that we kind of mentioned. So there's a lot of focus on, or even, with our conversation on that initial license, but that is, it's a little bit of a red herring, because once you get that license secured, you still have to then be able to implement, control the usage to whatever particular functionality that you've agreed to use, and then handle all the reporting back to the different types of rights holders. So so we built this all-in-one solution that allows early stage companies to really focus on their core business. They can come in and have that access to the music and that full integrated solution. So it really takes that, eliminates that lag in time to market, all the resources that would have to go into the music licensing up front, and gets you to the place you want to be much more quickly.
And trying to take some cues from, as you mentioned, Vickie, everyone has sort of the Spotify experience where they expect to be able to build playlists and make it, super easy to move music around. And so trying to come at it for the business from that same perspective. Okay, I'm going to create these collections, these playlists through the SDK, the API, I'm going to stream it directly in my app. And so kind of trying to merge those things and have it all be really seamless for the developer so that they can get it done quickly.
Yeah, and the model is very different. So it's, we built this on a SaaS model, monthly subscription basis, and it's like Lauren said, it's a very familiar UI and financial model for startups, and it really allows them to get in instantly, not paying a bunch of money for something that is unlaunched yet potentially, or that they're not sure of what their funding is going to be in the midterm, but they're able to get in and right away. And then find, you can see kind of here from this screenshot, there's a lot of different ways to find the music you're looking for. If you're an app that just wants to grab a bunch of music in a particular category quickly, we have the pre-curated collections of music, but then you can also drill down really granularly into specific songs by era or feel or intensity, BPM, all that sort of thing. So you can, depending on your music savvy and also how you're using music, like Vickie said, there's a lot of use cases now where music is really an enhancement, but it's not necessarily the primary driver of the app. So, it might not, you want particular songs, but you might not need a lot of them, or so this gives you a way to find exactly what you need.
Right. And it's also, like, we know that when you are building a standalone streaming service, that you're giving up in exchange, music is your core business. And part of that requires you giving up 50, 60, 70% of your revenues that you earn to the rights holders, because you built an experience solely around music. And that is, if that's what your core business is, then always I feel like you need a lot of money, you need a massive amount of engineers, and you need a really, really great product that is going to provide you with recurring revenue on razor thin margins. And it's about scale. And I feel like not every music service should have to scale to tens of millions of users in order to be successful and meaningful. And I'm really proud because I've had two different companies in the last few years exit, and they sold to bigger companies. I'm onboarded at both of the acquiring companies, but they had music rights, they had licenses, they had everything in place. There was zero liability. And I think that you can, and both of these companies had really limited catalogs, and music was a feature, but it was not the center of it. And to me, that's success. That is a really, really successful product. And I feel like if there are fitness applications that are just killing it in some niche fitness, cardio, dance, or high energy yoga, or whatever it might be, and they're serving a niche audience extremely well, but that may be a small audience, that should be a success also.
You're exactly right. And there are a million niche fitness experiences now, as you know. I just want to do a quick time check, Bryn. I'm not sure we'll have time to show a demo.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah.
We'll just talk a little bit about, quick moment again on Adaptr, and I'll let you go into why it's unique and a little bit different. And then we can talk about who's using it. I think that would probably be helpful and illustrative for people.
Okay. Yeah. So we mentioned this a little earlier, but there have been some attempts to do micro licensing of some sort, but it's really been experimental licenses, sandboxes where it's pre-launch, very restrictive short-term contracts. So Adaptr is unique in that that it is self-service, so you can log in. It's built on that SaaS model. You can have immediate access to the music to integrate. There's a bunch of different type use cases that are supported. So you can have, for example, it's interactive streaming, but you can support AV use cases like workout videos, gaming, where there is a different stream of video and additional audio. And we do offer major label content. So there have been some offers in the past where you have production libraries or select indie catalogs. We actually have hit commercial music available on the platform for those cases where you need something recognizable. And then what's not on here, but I mentioned earlier, it's not just the license. So it's not like we're going to give you go into the platform and download the music that you have license to. We actually, you use our SDK, you integrate it in. We support all the streaming, tracking, and payments through to the rights holders.
Well, I think that's an important point. That's also why we've been able to get the rights holders more comfortable with the scenario, right?
Right, because it never leaves our servers. They're not, we have to keep reiterating that even when they're familiar with the platform. Is like, well, what if someone's going to come in and all of a sudden they're using all this music? It's like we know every individual stream that's going out. There's not, someone cannot come in and all of a sudden there's millions of tracks flying all over. We have full transparency and visibility, and then in turn the rights holders and the customers have full transparency into activity.
I just want to interject that I know that we may be a little bit short on time, but I feel like it would be really great if you could show a demo, because I think these are the nuances of why Feed is able to do the things that they're doing. And if we don't have time for it, I think that's fine too. But I feel like it's a maybe if people want to get a demo, follow up with any of us, because I feel like that's another thing of who's serving the music to the consumer, and how does the music that's inside a video environment interact or not interact with that video. And these are the really, really thin, small shades of gray from a product development standpoint that make an enormous difference in your music.
That makes sense. No, we absolutely can. Bryn, why don't you cue it up, and then so we'll have time for that, and then we can just close with a little bit of conversation around kind of the startup
Who's
journey.
using it? Okay. All right.
Let me just see if I can hand this over to you.
Okay.
And then I want to make sure we do leave a little Q&A time too.
All right. Let me see if I can.
Should there be audio, Bryn?
I know I'm trying to, it's not letting me connect it to the,
Okay.
So Bryn, you're gonna want to stop sharing and then reshare. And at the bottom left hand, after you reshare, there should be a checkbox for you to select share audio.
okay. Yeah, I was looking for that, but I didn't. Oh, I see. Optimize for video. Got it.
It wouldn't be a demo. It wouldn't be a live demo if we didn't have a few little glitches.
It wouldn't be a Zoom session if
Exactly.
it didn't happen. Well, you know, if we can't get it going, then we can always send it out to attendees.
For startups.
Yeah.
And companies do have to qualify to use the
Is that
platform.
better?
Yes.
Let's say I'm a digital fitness startup and I'm building an app for an 80s themed run. I go into Adaptr here and I see that we have some pre-curated playlists available. One's actually 80s throwback. So I can go ahead and grab that whole playlist right away. I can listen to it. I can go into the playlist and look at specific songs. And I can even look for specific artists. Let's see if they have any more Culture Club. I only want 80s Culture Club. I'm going to go down here to the artist page. And I'm going to go ahead and grab, oh, we already have that track in our playlist. I'm going to grab Avalon here. So we make it very easy to surface music in a number of different ways. As you can see, we have the pre-curated playlists. You can search by artists, and then we also have recommendations all throughout the platform. And you can easily grab any of these songs to add to the run here. Now I'm going to go into my app and I'm going to launch it. The Adaptr is really built to grow that early stage of the market, to make it super quick and easy for startups to access music. This will significantly speed their time to market and increase their chances of success. And when our partners are ready to graduate outside of our guardrails here, then we can either work with our rights holders to continue to support them, or they'll be in a position to negotiate direct deals. It's as easy as that. We're looking forward to working with you.
So I think that's a good point there at the end, Bryn, which is, it's a journey, and this is one specific segment of that journey that we're serving. And ultimately, we, both Feed and Adaptr, want to help our partners figure out the right solution, whether it's us or not, and make those introductions and just try to help people essentially do the right thing.
And I think it's a great point. Maybe you could talk just a little bit more about how you're defining startups and early stage.
Yes, definitely, because that's an important piece of why it works, essentially. So, Bryn, do you want to talk about the guardrails?
Yeah, so this information is available on the site too. We have very specific qualifications for startups to be able to use the platform. So it's anywhere from pre-launch, you can start right away when you're building to experiment with how music is going to work for you, all the way to up to a certain level of funding, $7 million of funding, $4.5 million of revenue. And then there's some criteria around users. It's 100,000 for your ad supported or 10,000 subscribers. So, startups have this certain journey, which is definitely not linear. But we're really there to support all the way from day one through to the point where you've been able to, depending on what your strategy is, raise a certain amount of money, prove out your concept to the market, get users on board. And as you're going through that process, we have different plan levels, again, to support you. So you're able to start with a package that makes sense for you. And then all the way to the point where you're well enough resourced and have a great product that you can then go directly to labels and negotiate those deals.
Yep, and I think to Vickie's point, that early proof of concept stage, figure out a solution, get some knowledge, help let the use cases be driven by the content and the copyright law as well, and find ways to make those work really nicely together so that you can get to market, start optimizing price, start doing marketing, and when you're ready, then we can talk about that scale and growth mode.
And I think it's I often talk about product market music fit, because that's also another dimension. And of all the companies I've worked with, from some of the biggest multinationals down to early stage startups, when they launch music inside a product, you always have an anticipation of what music you think is going to work and how people are going to get engaged with it. And I have never, ever seen one where it's like, it was exactly what we thought. There's always surprises. Your demographic, caters to something that you didn't anticipate, or they're not using the music that you thought, or they're requesting music that you didn't think that would be right. And so you need the flexibility to be able to experiment and sometimes get things wrong, and then to figure out, okay, that was a miss, and where do we go from here? And to have a partner, like a flexible partner and a flexible set of rights, is really, really key in those stages.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. It's the being able to do the experimentation. And when you're going and doing direct deals off the bat, it's not, you really have to get it right right away. You've already spent all your money, and this gives you that time and flexibility to try things.
Yep. Great. Well, we should probably take a look and see if there's any questions we need to answer.
There must be someone who's a startup that has.
We were so thorough that
Everybody understands everything now.
yes.
They need.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting talking about the flexibility. I mean, that's like the ability to optimize and move quickly and be nimble. Like that's part of the startup journey, period. But it just applies. It feels like it's under a magnifying glass when you start to talk about incorporation of music.
Yeah, and the other thing that happens is so sad is that if you are, oftentimes to license a full catalog, labels and publishers, sometimes it can take 3 years. And so it's the beginning of that process, and you say, we have this fantastic idea, nobody else is doing it, it's going to be amazing, and then we're going to put music in, and that will make this great product experience. So then you enter into the licensing process, and during that 3-year, even 18 months, which is short for getting licenses from all the labels and all the publishers for one market, in that time period, the market moves on, and the opportunity for that killer user experience that you envisioned at the start. Now there's 10 other companies that have done it, or it's redundant because, one of the big tech companies has integrated that feature and, nobody's going to pay for it in a standalone app. There's lots and lots of reasons why things go wrong. But the time to market, I think is essential, because things evolve so quickly that, to do 3 years of licensing, that actually sounds like I'm talking about prison time to do 3 years. But, to take 3 years out to get your licenses in place. Then once you get those licenses in place, it's for everything that you wanted to do at the beginning of your journey. And now everything has changed. And so you have to start over and modify all of the terms and all of the things that you thought you wanted.
Right. Well, there's a couple of good questions that I think touch on things that we may have missed. So one is, can you try music for free before you launch your app through Adaptr? And the answer is yes. So all of the integration and the testing. So you're going through, to your point, Vickie, and trying to figure out what you think the right use case and interactivity and UX should be. And yes, you can absolutely integrate the music and essentially try for free while you're figuring that out.
That's great.
Question.
And Bryn, it looks like there's a question about, also a question about adding catalog to what Feed is doing. Is that you?
Yes, so I'm not seeing the question.
That was
but
just
oh, okay. Yeah, so we do have a way to submit your music for consideration for the catalog, and you can email me directly if you want after this panel. I'm Bryn at feed.fm. But if you go to the Adaptr site, you'll see there's at the bottom a rights holder link. And actually, I'll probably put this up so you can go to it, but you can get more information as a rights holder there and then submit your catalog.
It looks like one question. Lauren, do you want to answer that?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think we probably all could. Do you feel the more information you provide, the quicker you could clear something? So if you're going to the labels and the publishers, I mean, short answer is yes. Right?
I mean, yes and no, but I feel like yes, in the sense you want to be, transparent, and you want to share with the labels and publishers what it is that you want to do. But I also feel like there's a double-edged sword there, because if you don't know, if you're at an early stage where you're like, oh, we think it's going to be appealing to these customers, and we think it's going to be that, we think it's going to be this. If you're not sure, then they're going to take that meeting and they're going to park it into a file, which is, okay, they need to get, later, they need to come back when they know what they're doing. And so, there's an art, I think, to knowing what to disclose, because you want to build confidence in your vision and what it is that you want to do. but you know, you don't necessarily want to lay every single card and every single uncertainty on the table.
Good advice. Yeah. Well, you know, we're a little bit over time, so I guess it looks like we answered all the questions, and definitely follow up. We're all available for comments or questions afterwards, and just say thanks so much to both of you and to everyone who attended.
Thank you guys for, on behalf of Music Biz, for putting this together. Bryn, Vickie, and Lauren, great to have you, and great to have you all who participated today. If you want to go back and watch, we'll put the recording on the Music Biz website for anything you might have missed or weren't able to scribble fast enough while you were taking notes. So thank you all, and we'll see you back on the Common Ground webinar series shortly. Take care.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
Have a great day.